Have you ever tried to help someone only to have it backfire spectacularly? I mean, your intentions were pure gold, but the outcome was just a disaster. Well, today we're diving into one of the most shocking stories in the Bible about a man who tried to help God and paid for it with his life. It's a story that's puzzled people for centuries. Was God being overly harsh, or is there something deeper going on? Let's set the scene. We're in ancient Israel, and King David, a man described as being after God's own heart, is on the throne. After years of turmoil and war, David has finally brought peace and unity to the kingdom. His next big project, to bring the Ark of the Covenant, the most sacred object in all of Israel, to his new capital, Jerusalem. Now, what exactly is the Ark of the Covenant? Imagine a golden box, intricately designed, overlaid with pure gold inside and out. It's not just a fancy piece of furniture, it's the very symbol of God's presence and power among his people. Inside were the stone tablets with the Ten Commandments, a pot of manna from the wilderness, and Aaron's staff it was, in essence, God's throne on earth. This wasn't something you treated casually. It was the physical manifestation of God's holiness. The last time the ark was in the spotlight, things didn't go so well. The Israelites had foolishly taken it into battle like a good luck charm, and the Philistines captured it. But for the Philistines, possessing the ark was a curse, not a blessing. Plagues and disasters followed it wherever it went, until they finally sent it back to Israel in a panic. For the next 20 years, the ark sat in a house in a town called Kiriath-Jearim, largely forgotten, but now David is king, and he wants to restore proper worship in Israel. Bringing the ark to Jerusalem is the centerpiece of his plan. It's a massive celebration. The Bible says 30,000 men from all over Israel gathered for this event. There's music, dancing, shouting. It's a national party. David is ecstatic. The presence of God is finally coming home. But right from the start, they make a critical mistake. A mistake that reveals a fundamental misunderstanding of who God is. How are they supposed to transport the ark? The instructions were given hundreds of years earlier in the book of Numbers. God was very specific. The ark was to be carried on long poles, inserted through rings on its sides, and shouldered by a specific family of Levites. They were never, ever to touch the ark itself. Why? Because the ark represented God's pure Unapra Chabla holiness. So, what does David do? He puts the ark on a brand new cart, pulled by oxen. Where did they get this idea? Probably from the Philistines. That's how they had sent the ark back. They didn't know any better, but Israel should have. They had the instructions. It seems that in their excitement and enthusiasm, they opted for a method that was convenient and seemed practical, rather than the one God had commanded. They were treating the holy ark of God like any other piece of cargo. The procession starts. 2 men, Uzzah and Ahio, sons of the man who had housed the ark for 20 years, are guiding the cart. The parade is moving along, filled with joy and celebration. David himself is dancing before the Lord with all his might. Everything seems to be going perfectly. They're approaching Jerusalem. The music is swelling. The crowd is cheering. They get to a place called the threshing floor of Nikon, and then it happens. The oxen stumble. Maybe they hit a rock or a rut in the road. The cart lurches, and the Ark of the Covenant begins to slide. It looks like it's about to fall to the ground. In that split second, Uzzah reacts instinctively. He reaches out his hand to steady the ark. It's a natural human reflex, right? You see something precious about to fall and break, you try to save it. His intention was surely good. He was trying to protect this sacred object from being damaged or touching the unclean ground. He was trying to help. But the moment his hand touches the ark, the unthinkable happens. The Bible says the Lord's anger burned against Uzzah because of his irreverent act. Therefore God struck him down, and he died there beside the ark of God. Instant death. The music stops. The cheering dies. The celebration turns into a scene of horror and confusion. A man who was just trying to help is now dead, and everyone, especially King David, is left in stunned silence. This is the part of the story that makes us all uncomfortable. Why would God do this? Uzzah's heart was in the right place, wasn't it? This seems incredibly harsh, even cruel. It can make God seem like a temperamental tyrant, waiting to zap anyone who makes a tiny mistake. But to understand this, we have to shift our perspective. This story isn't about Uzzah's intentions. It's about God's holiness. Throughout the Old Testament, God goes to great lengths to teach his people one crucial lesson. I am holy, and you are not. Holiness means being set apart, perfect, pure, completely other. Coming into contact with God's raw holiness was like touching a live, high-voltage power line. It's not that the power line is evil. It is that its nature is powerful and dangerous to anything that is properly grounded or insulated. Uzzah's touch, however well-intentioned, was a violation of God's explicit command. The problem wasn't just Uzzah's individual action. It was the culmination of a whole series of disobedient and casual choices. They had ignored God's clear instructions for transporting the ark. They treated the holy as if it were common. Uzzah's acts, in that moment, implied something profound. That his hand was cleaner than the dirt on the ground. That he, a man, could save the symbol of God's presence. It was an act of presumption, born from a spirit of irreverence that had permeated the entire event. God was making a terrifyingly clear statement. My holiness is not to be trifled with. My commands are not mere suggestions. Good intentions do not override my divine law. He was reestablishing the awesome and fearful respect that his presence demands. He is God, and we are not. Think about David's reaction. He wasn't just sad, he was angry and afraid. He was so terrified that he abandoned the whole project. He refused to bring the ark into Jerusalem and left it at the house of a man named Obed. David realized he had approached God on his own terms, with his own methods, and the result was death. He needed to stop and figure out what he did wrong, and this is where the story takes a turn. For 3 months, the ark stays with Obed. And what happens? Does his family get struck down? No. The Bible says the Lord blessed Obed and his entire household. News of this blessing gets back to David, and this time, David understands. The presence of God isn't a curse. It brings blessing when it's approached in the right way with reverence, humility, and obedience. So David prepares for a second attempt, but this time he does it by the book. He sanctifies the Levites, the proper priests, to do the jobi. They carry the ark on their shoulders using the poles, just as God commanded. And as they take the first 6 steps, David offers sacrifices. He is no longer casual. He is careful, deliberate, and worshipful. This time, the journey is a success. The ark is brought into Jerusalem with even greater joy than before, a joy now tempered with a deep and healthy fear of the Lord. So, what's the takeaway for us today? We don't have a physical ark of the covenant, but we do have access to the presence of God in an even more direct way through Jesus Christ. The book of Hebrews tells us that Jesus is the ultimate high priest who has opened up a new and living way for us to approach God. But the story of Uzzah remains a powerful reminder. It teaches us that while God is our loving Father, he is also the holy, all-powerful creator of the universe. We can't approach him casually or on our own terms. We can think that our good intentions are enough if we are living in disobedience to his known will. Sometimes we try to help God. We try to manage our lives, fix our problems, and control outcomes using our own strength and wisdom, ignoring his guidance. We might have the best intentions, but we're essentially reaching out our own hand of Uzzah, trying to steady a situation that we should be entrusting to God's sovereignty. The story challenges us to examine how we approach God. Do we come to him with reverence and humility, acknowledging his holiness? Or do we treat him like a cosmic buddy or a vending machine, someone who exists to serve our plans? Uzzah's death is a stark and sobering lesson. It forces us to grapple with the immense gap between God's perfect holiness and our own sinfulness. And in doing so, it should make us incredibly grateful for Jesus. Because of his sacrifice, the veil was torn. We no longer have to fear being struck down. We can approach God's throne of grace with confidence. But that confidence isn't arrogance. It's a confidence born out of what Christ has done for us. And it should always be paired with the same reverence and awe that David learned the hard way. God's holiness is not something to be feared in a way that pushes us away, but to be respected in a way that draws us into correct and life-giving worship. Let's learn from Uzzah and David. Let's seek to know God's ways and walk in them, approaching his incredible presence, not with casual presumption, but with humble, obedient, and joyful hearts. Thanks for watching. If this story made you think, hit that like button and subscribe for more deep dives into the Bible. See you next time.